Welcome to Bay Sunday. I'm your host, Kenny Choi. The election's still on a lot of people's minds. On November 8th, Americans went to the polls and elected Donald Trump to be the 45th president of the United States. It was a major upset, to say the least, given that for weeks, pollsters and pundits had predicted for a victory for Secretary Hillary Clinton. Here with me in studio this morning is Jon Cohen, a former pollster for the Washington Post and currently the senior vice president of SurveyMonkey in Palo Alto, one of the top pollsters in the country. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us what happened. Virtually all the polls had it wrong on Tuesday.
That's right. Well, we don't know yet whether this was like a normal polling error or something cataclysmic. You know, we've been on the precipice of kind of big changes in the polling industry for a long time as more and more people cut the cord at home and go onto their mobile phones. And the internet hasn't yet come up with a replacement that everyone agrees on. We're working very hard on one at SurveyMonkey, but we have to get everyone else to buy into it too.
So you get to play Sunday morning quarterback in this case, looking back at the elections on November 8th. Why did they get it wrong?
Well, not everything was wrong. First of all, polls here in California were spot on, including the ones that we did for the LA Times back in September about many of the propositions, including the Senate race, here as well. So lots of things were right. And we got major things right in the presidential race as well. We had Donald Trump with outsized support throughout the Midwest and the Rust Belt, which was a big contrast to other polls. So the dynamic was there. All the polls, including ours, did point to the wrong winner this time, and that is something that we all have to look at very hard, because we have to know that we're getting representative samples, because we want the few people that we interview to be projectable to everyone, and that's a big challenge. Scientific. There's a science involved in that, and there's also an art, and we're looking into it.
I know that SurveyMonkey is different from a lot of the other pollsters that are out there. Looking ahead, is SurveyMonkey looking at doing things a little bit differently, or in general, are most pollsters thinking, all right, we have to try to switch or change up what we've done in the past?
It's a great question. Everyone is looking at changing, right? Whether people are still doing telephone polls the way they've done for decades, or various online approaches, everyone has to look to change after something like this. And what we have the advantage of at SurveyMonkey, because we're the world's #1 online survey platform, been around for 17 years. We have 3 million responses every day. We have access to kind of modeling in more sophisticated ways, leveraging in other sorts of data into our estimates. So we have an advantage in kind of what we can improve. And that's to say, we also got a lot of things right as we are right now.
I think your typical voter out there wonders, how do pollsters work? How do they come up with the numbers, the percentages? Obviously, there's always a plus-minus margin of 3 or 4%. When you explain to the people out there how a poll works, how would you describe that?
Well, it's a challenge no matter how we are doing the interviews to explain this. People always come up and say, well, I wasn't polled. At the end of the day, we were drawing a lot of conclusions from relatively small samples. The science
small
behind
sample
it,
meaning?
So a typical national poll will be between 400 and 1,000 people. We actually interviewed about 1 million people over the course of this campaign. And so we have the opportunity, as I mentioned, to dig in and figure out, what we did well and where we got it right, and also figure out where we can improve. So we have that opportunity. But at the end of the day, you're taking a sample, even if it's 1 million in our case. 130 million or so Americans voted on November 8th or through early ballot. We only talked to about 1 million. So you're still extrapolating from a relatively small number, even a large one, to a much bigger number. The key is random sampling. Did I get a random representative poll of the population I'm trying to estimate? And that has become increasingly challenged over the decades on the telephone as more and more people decide not to answer their phones. And it's a challenge on the internet because we don't have a fully articulated sense of what that population really is. But we have real opportunity there.
And what about, how do pollsters tackle the fact that there are going to be people who do answer the surveys, who do answer the calls from pollsters, but they're lying, essentially, or they don't want to tell you what they're really thinking?
Right. So and Donald Trump said this throughout the campaign. There were a lot of shy Trump voters. There are people who didn't want to express to pollsters, whether it was online or on the telephone, what their true expressions were. We have to think hard of that. The entire industry relies on people telling us the truth. I think the vast majority of the evidence is that they do. The challenge that we have, at least the one that confronts us most immediately, is people not participating, not people manipulating us. But I do think that we have to be careful as the world transitions online, the research world transitions online, as it absolutely will, is this notion of are you getting true impressions, or can you control the people who are trying to manipulate you? Take those post-debate polls that Donald Trump sent around so widely on social media over the course of the fall. If you just put a link up, as some news organizations did, anyone can access those. People can program bots to do them. That's called self-selection. People are self-selecting into those polls. They are not representative of other people. We as pollsters need to be able to control that, and that's what we do at SurveyMonkey. No one can manipulate our polls intentionally. We randomly select people in, and that's a key difference.
We don't have too much time, but when you take a look at the polls, they have been wrong in the past. Have you ever seen something like this happen before in presidential elections?
Well, again, the average error this time may not actually turn out to be that different from 2012. The major difference, of course, is that all the polls pointed to the wrong winner, and that's why we have to take a hard look at it. But we also took a hard look at it after 2012 and refined our methodologies. More and more people started incorporating online into their telephone work this time, and we'll see further changes in the same direction before 2020.
All right, Jon, thank you so much for the insight. It's been very eye-opening as we kind of look back at the results of the election from Tuesday. Jon, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
And if you'd like to get more information about SurveyMonkey, you can check out their website at surveymonkey.com. We'll be back with more on the election on Bay Sunday after this break.